Gillian Huylar. I'm from the WSU Environmental Science Club, and today we're here with Dr. Sean Long to do an interview. So, Dr. Long, how long have you been living in Pullman?
I've been here for 3.5 years.
Okay.
Not that long. But I did grow up not too far from here.
Oh, really?
Like 2 hours from here, actually. So,
okay.
But I've only been living here for 3.5 years.
Okay, so 3.5 years. That's a little longer than I've been here. What are your favorite things to do around here?
Oh, geez, I really like. I like to get out. I like to get outside and do a lot of stuff in the winter and the summer. I don't know. I ski, and so I ski, and then I have a son who's almost 5, and so I'm trying to teach him how to ski. So we get out and do all sorts of fun stuff like that. We get out and hike a lot in the summer. There's a bunch of, particularly east of here. Once you go east of Troy, there's a bunch of nice forests and Forest Service trails and stuff. So I get out and do a lot of fun stuff like that.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right here in Pullman, do you have any recommendations for favorite things to do, favorite places to eat, or your?
Yeah, have you been? There's the new place called the Lumber Yard, which I really like, which just opened just a couple months ago, which has been a good addition for sure. And yeah, I don't know. My son loves the bowling alley. I take him there all the time. That's actually pretty fun, but mainly because it has video games. And I don't know. I hang out in Moscow a lot too because that's only 10 minutes away. There's a lot of fun places over there. Yeah, I actually lived in Moscow when I first moved here, so I have a lot of friends over there. So yeah, so both towns. I don't know. They're so close.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you grew up not far from here. So what in this area made you interested in pursuing geology?
Oh, that's a good question because I actually had I had kind of a longer route to get into geology. I didn't. My bachelor's isn't in geology; it's in math. I grew up in a town called Grangeville, which is about 2 hours south of here, and then I went to college in Boise, not at Boise State, but a little school called the College of Idaho, and I never had a earth science class in junior high or high school, and so honestly, really didn't know much about geology at all when I started college, and then I didn't even discover it until spring of my junior year. But at that point, it didn't make any sense to transfer, so I just stayed and finished my math degree. And then I actually came to the University of Idaho and started a master's program. I went directly to a master's program. So in terms of what I took in school, not much, but I've always been big into outdoors, and I think just once I learned how much the potential is for outdoor work in geology, that was one of the main things that excited me about it. And that seems to be one of the main things that excites most early majors into geology, just the kind of the outdoor aspect of it. Yeah, it's fun.
Okay. I know that you've traveled a lot. Where are the favorite places you've traveled for work?
Oh, geez. Well, definitely would be the place I've gone the most would be the Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan, which I had the great fortune of going there for my PhD work, which I went there 3 times for my PhD work between 2007 and 2010. But then I've been able to go back. I've been there 7 times total. I've been able to go back as most recently was 2016. Okay. So I've been there 7 times. Yeah, I think I've spent over a year in the country doing field work, and that's been one of the highlights of my life, honestly. It's a really hard place to get to. It's very remote, very closed off to tourists, and I've been able to just cover virtually that entire country. It's not a very big country, but able to go to all of the easy to access places in it, and I hope to keep going back. That place has been amazing for sure. And then I've done some work in South America in the Andes, in the country of Bolivia, which I've been to twice, and that's been pretty great. And I hope to go back to Peru pretty soon, or I hope to start a project in Peru pretty soon, because that's all. The Andes are pretty incredible too. And then the other place I went, just this last summer, I went to the northwestern part of India, which is still part of the Himalaya, way up in the northwestern corner in Kashmir. Actually, I went there, and that was pretty amazing. It's high and dry. It's a really neat place. So all good places. But even in the western U.S., I do a lot of work in the western U.S. in Nevada and Utah, which are very, I think, underrated states. Nevada gets kind of a bad rap, but it's a pretty amazing place, I think. So all those places and more. It's really fun. I get to travel a lot, so it's one of my favorite parts.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me a little bit about the research that you're doing right now, or the research that you were doing for your PhD?
Yeah, absolutely. So in general, what I study is basically these really big mountain belts like the Himalaya and the Andes, and specifically the long-term processes by which they form. And essentially what that amounts to is studying how plate tectonics acts to deform the margins of continental plates and essentially shorten them horizontally and thicken them vertically. So really, to make a mountain belt, you basically need to take you basically need to shorten the plate horizontally and thicken it vertically to about twice its original thickness. And what that does is it supports high elevations. That's how we get high elevations. And so essentially, in the 3 different mountain belts I work in, I'm studying the kind of long-term processes of how we shorten the crust, which involves a lot of field work. It essentially involves making geologic maps of these really long, sometimes like in the case of the Andes, probably a 600-kilometer long transect east-west through the mountain belt, looking for things like faults and folds, which are these features that have actually have stacked rocks up and over each other repeatedly many times. That's the main process by which we actually shortened the South American plate. And so I'm looking at the kind of geometric details of that, and then I get a series of different types of dates that help kind of radiometric dates and other kinds that actually help determine when these faults slipped and stacked up. And then I integrate all these together in a big model in models that kind of give us details on how the kind of how and when of the construction of the mountain belt, usually over tens of millions of years of time. So, because these, like the Himalayas were built over the last 40 or 50 million years, the Andes were built over the last 60 or 70 million years. So it's a really long-term records. So every time I come back with a lot of rock samples, usually a couple 100 kilograms of rocks, and then I cut microscope slides out of them, and I do a lot of work I get a lot of my dates and a lot of temperatures and other types of data I get straight off of microscope slides. So I actually don't necessarily work with big rocks. I actually work with little microscope slides of them for the most part. So so it's great. And then I'm also interested in the western U.S. in particular. You had a big mountain belt that then collapsed and extended to form this amazing province in Nevada and Utah we call the Basin and Range Province. I'm actually really interested in how we extend mountain belts too. So when I go down there, I work on systems of faults that instead of accommodating shortening, they actually accommodate extension and thinning of the crust. So I'm interested in both. So it's pretty great. I love it. It's really fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You mentioned starting another project up soon. What are you interested in doing for that?
I'm interested in. I'm very interested in Peru. I want to go to this area in northern Peru. Okay, I told you I'm really interested in how we shorten the crust and how we thin it afterward. But sometimes you get extension in parts of mountain belts while the rest of them are still being thickened, and that is really interesting to me because it's testament to how dynamic these systems really are. I'm really interested in why you get extension and thinning in a part of a mountain belt while it's still being built and shortened in most other places. So Peru is actually, northern Peru, there's a fault system there that is accommodating thinning of the western part of the mountain belt while the eastern part is still being built up higher. And I'm interested when that happened and why that happened. So that's one project I'm really trying to get going. And then one other is in Kashmir in the northwest Himalaya, which I did some pilot field work last year. This is kind of amazing, where you actually buried rocks. The very earliest rocks of India that when they collided with Asia were buried down to depths over 100 kilometers. Yet somehow these rocks were brought back to the surface, and that's a really tricky process that we don't understand very well. So I'm trying to understand the faults that essentially brought these rocks back up to the surface. So those are 2 places I'm really interested in and projects I'm trying to get going.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Of
it was
course.
fantastic talking to you.
Yeah, it was great talking with you as well.
Until next time, thank you.
Thank you.